Hello, everybody. I'm Lucas from Studio Sparks.
Hello, I'm Trish.
And we are here with Impasto Gardens, who is releasing his second single.
This week, right?
Yes, on Friday. Very excited.
Glass Dose. How are you doing? Are you good?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. It's a nice chilly day here in Austin, Texas, which is rare, and that's why I've got my warm cap and warm sweatshirt on. But just enjoying. It's a quiet day here because tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and a lot of people have off from work today.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty quiet. I'm just kind of enjoying a slow kind of day. How about you? How's things over there?
Oh, good. This is super cold here too.
Yeah, but it was a sunny, cold.
Yeah, today
day.
was
Strange.
surprisingly sunny, which was really nice. And we are planning an escape during the holidays to Brazil, so I can visit
Nice.
my family and we can get a little more sun too. Yeah, but all good. I've been listening actually to your band,
Oh.
Nightmare of You. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Yeah. You thought about another band, or that's the?
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Impasto Gardens project, but of course you've heard that.
Yeah. No, I was just searching. I was listening on we have like Apple Music, and I was also seeing some videos on YouTube, and I really like it. I really like the style.
So you saw
I like
you saw a much younger me.
Yeah, you are the bass player, right? For what I noticed.
No, I was the lead guitar player.
Oh yeah, but I saw you playing bass on some videos. Maybe it was just for the video?
Maybe, I don't know. In the later years, I played some bass on the recordings and a little bit live, but no, primarily I was the lead guitar player.
But did you had any role in like writing the songs, or it was more like the other
Yeah, the
guys?
songwriting was kind of a duo. It was a tag team. Brandon Riley, who remains a very dear friend of mine to this day, he was the primary songwriter. He wrote all the lyrics and most of the song structures and chord structures, and almost like a coloring book. You know, when like a kid's coloring book, you know how you have just like a blank page with the black outlines of things. Like I had a lot of fun like taking his coloring book and coloring it in, sort of. So I would work with him. It was very much like a writing duo, like a team. And but he was the primary writer, and then I would add instrumentation and different melodies and harmonies and just add a lot to the song. So it was cool. It was very different than what I share that because I'm glad you asked, actually, because it's in contrast to what I've been doing in recent years by myself, which is trying to figure out how to write all of it on my own, for better or worse, you know.
Mm-hmm. But there's like any stuff that you think that it's similar with what you did in the past? There's like any things that you find like any connections between the projects?
Well, yes, like from an instrumentation point of view, like I'm still playing analog instruments, guitars, basses, keyboards, live, acoustic drums, things like that. So from a timbre perspective, it's similar. And then from an inspiration perspective, that group you probably heard, you could hear influences in that, like, Smiths and some 80s British, new wave pop, The Cure, stuff like that. And I'm still inspired and influenced by those groups. I think maybe more leaning in the like neo-psych shoegaze direction.
Yeah. I can
nowadays,
on this new track I can definitely hear shoegaze. Yeah.
And the other difference too is like Brandon in Nightmare of You is like such a good songwriter. He is a strong lyricist, where that's just like not a strength for me. Like he would always have strong lyrics and strong song structure, solid song structures, and then we would add sort of musical bits to it. My process is kind of the reverse, where I'm interested in sort of the musical melodies. Like I don't even start with songs. I start with a lot of parts and bits, and like I was mentioning to you, like loops and grooves and vibes and feels. Like I just sonic kind of like ideas, and then I'll see if I can kind of mold those into some kind of song structure. So it's a little bit backwards in terms of process for me.
So for you, the lyrics are kind of the last thing you had on a song.
Yeah, and initially I wasn't even gonna write any lyrics because again, that's not really like my thing, but I was going down this path where I had, a bunch of instrumental recordings, and I just thought these are cool, but how often would I really sit and just listen to this much instrumental music in the way that it is? And some friends encouraged me. Some friends had said, you should, make an attempt at trying to sing on some of these, make them a little bit more, I don't know, consumable, approachable, songs that other people want to hear. Again, this is really kind of just a personal project that I'm doing for fun. So it's really for me in a selfish kind of way, what would I like to hear? And I kind of agreed with that, which was like, yeah, this would be more interesting if they took the shape of songs that had vocals. And I like the idea of voice as an instrument, even if the words are abstract or just completely left for interpretation. I'm certainly not like a poet or a storyteller. Like, I'm not writing lyrics that way, but I think using it as another instrument, just like playing guitar or bass melodically, just having being able to use vocals that way, is pretty cool. So I went for it. And so, yeah, a lot of the vocals. So some of the tracks on the album were like finished instrumental tracks. I left 2 instrumental tracks on the album. So of the 11 songs on the album, 9 of them have vocals. 1 of them is featuring my friend Brian Bonds, and the other 8 are myself. So yeah, I wrote 8 songs worth of vocals and sang them, which was a first. I had never done that before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that was your first experience singing, or have you singing on your previous band or other project?
I've never been a lead singer,
Mm.
but I've sang before live and on recordings, but mainly just backing vocals, harmonies, and not the lead.
Mm-hmm. But I think you're sounding really good. I don't know if you had to, if I don't know if you add a lot of effects or stuff like that to make it more like shoegaze, because I noticed there's a bit of a reverb. I'm not the best one to describe songs because I'm not very literate on that subject, but
No,
I don't know if it makes
I know
sense.
what you're saying. I know what you're saying. And like, yeah, usually, and especially in that shoegaze kind of genre, heavily reverb lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, vocals. And that was kind of my assumption was that, well, yeah, it doesn't really, like my lyrical content is only going to be so important because it's going to be so wet anyway. Can you really hear it? And I was listening to things that I enjoy, and I was listening to like Slow Dive records and some other records, and I listen to music a certain way. Some people listen to music and they just listen for the words and music, whatever. I listen completely the other way. Like I could love a song and not be able to tell you one word from it. I just don't pay. But I was thinking about some of the more shoegaze type stuff that I listen to. And half the time I can't make out the words anyway, because it is usually either like tucked in the mix or just so heavily affected. So I kind of assumed that I was going to go down that path too. And then Danny Kalb, who mixed the recordings, I think he did a really tasteful and nice job of finding a balance between, making like clarity in the vocal to be able to like actually hear it, versus the appropriate application of effects to it. So I was really happy with how it came out. And like for me, I don't really like the sound of my own voice. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable when they hear a recording of themselves. I don't really like the sound of my voice. So I was concerned that like I wouldn't want to listen to the songs, but I got over it. And I think like Danny Kalb, again, is such like a pro that he not only did a great job with the output of the recording, but just like as a source of confidence and inspiration, he kind of like pumped me up and talked me through it. Like, don't worry, this is going to be good. And I trusted him. I trusted him, and I'm glad I did.
No, I think it sounds great. I wouldn't say it was like your first like project, the singing, did you have any voice lessons or any training, or
Not
you
really.
just sang?
So I will tell you this, like in the process of making this record, I sang these songs many times. Like I recorded them and re-recorded them and re-recorded them, and I tried different microphones. I tried different techniques. And then I went to New York and I visited a friend of mine, Jared Samuel. He's a super talented musician and producer, and he's got a studio in New York called Pale Moon Services. And his artist name is Invisible Familiars. And he works with a lot of bands. He makes his own music, he records other music, he writes and produces. He's just like a creative force. But in any case, I went to his place in New York, and he was going to help me record some vocals. He did help me record vocals. There's a couple tracks on the album that were recorded with him there, and he gave me a couple of pretty straightforward and simple lessons. A lot of singing has to do with breathing. Well, one, he taught me how to properly warm up, like how to warm up your vocal cords and your voice, which I always knew was important, but maybe I was just too lazy to do it. But having seen the difference, like he forced me to do it before we sang a note. Like he's like, you sit down at this piano, and he showed me an exercise, do this all the way up as high as you can go, and then all the way back down. And sure enough, 15, 20 minutes later, I was nice and loose. And then once I was warmed up, he taught me some other exercises during the actual singing process about breathing. I would, to make a long story short, he helped me learn to apply a lot more breath to the singing than I was thinking of, like than was instinctual to me. And just like the amount of focus on breath, the frequency, how many breaths to take, where to take them in a line, making sure I have ample breath support, like that made a huge difference to me. And then other sort of physical gesturing, like sometimes just even the way, like even what to do with your hands when you're singing, like if I'm reaching for a note, or if, something just kind of like physical acting out of, I don't know, not necessarily an emotion, but just using my body as an extension of my voice in the recording process was something that and that was really cool. And like, he taught me all that stuff in a matter of a couple hours. And I brought that home with me and basically re-recorded all of my vocal tracks again. And eventually got to a place where I was like, okay, I think I can put the pencil down now. I think I've done my best, like that's the other thing too, is like, I had to get to a place because, again, like a lot of the musical ideas on this record are things that were incomplete but sitting around for 2, 3, maybe 5 years. I've had some of this stuff I've been working on for a long time, and when I decided I was going to make a full-length album, I had to finish it at some point. I had to put.
It's cool because it sounds like you're mentioning the vocal training, and it's also something physical that you're going on. So looks like it's not just because for us, like we are doing a project, but we are just sitting on our desks with our some.
Yeah, but your body feels.
Yeah, but I mean, you physically had to prepare to this, and like you are mentioning 1 year or something, like it looks like you're like somebody like training for a marathon or something like that,
mentally more than physically. I had mentioned to you maybe in another conversation just some of the mental challenges that I had to get over in terms of like confidence and self-doubt. And because I decided I am going to do this, and I'm going to hold myself accountable to this. And whether it's 6 months from now, a year and a half from now, I am going to have a full-length album, and I am going to release it publicly, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to, do the best I can to be proud of it. And then throughout that time, I went through phases of, yes, I'm doing it. And then periods of, no, this is terrible. Like, what am I thinking? This is such a bad idea. They're all going to laugh at me, kind of a thing. So just like big swings in terms of confidence. So it was a mental Olympics, I think, more than physical. Most of the time was spent sitting in this chair at my computer doing editing and stuff. But yeah, eventually I got to a point where I just had to say,
like you mentioned it, that you recorded some stuff on New York, then on his studio there. So you also like move it along and recorded stuff in different places too, right?
Yes, and the drums were also recorded in New York, not by me. So I had a drum kit set up behind me in this little room, and I did my best. I'm not a drummer, I am not a drummer. I can keep a simple beat, but my initial idea was I would set up a drum kit in here, and then I was just going to perform all the drums and record them. And if it took me a while, so be it. And in the end, I just wasn't happy with it. And I thought I was doing a disservice to the songs because I liked the songs. I just thought the drums were garbage. So I called a friend of mine who is a great drummer, Rick Penzone. He goes by Richard Flesh is his pen name. And he's an old friend of mine. And he's been a real source of moral support for me with this project, because I've just been sending him things and just been getting feedback, and he's got a critical ear, so it's like he helped me stay on track with this. And anyway, he is such a good drummer that I sent him the files, and he went in a studio in New York and pretty much did the whole thing in a day, and sent the drum files back, and I was able to work with those moving forward. So drums were recorded in New York. I recorded a couple tracks worth of vocals in New York. Brian Bonds, who is featured on one of the songs, he recorded his own vocals. He lives in New York. And then I recorded the rest here in my home studio. And then Danny Kalb, who did the mixing and the mastering, his studio is in Ohio. So he completed the record there. And then when I'm going to get some vinyl produced, so I'll have a physical album, and I'm working with a local company here in Austin called Gold Rush Vinyl, and they make really great product. So yeah, it's different parts of the process happen all over the place.
Yeah. I was going to ask you to maybe talk more about this particular track that you are releasing, more about the theme and how it was to compose it.
Yeah, so Glass Dose is one of the ones that started as an instrumental. And if you listen back to it after we talk about this, you might hear what I'm saying, which is it's more musical than you might think, because if you took the vocals out of it, it's still a very sort of ambient, almost a little bit haunting, very ethereal, reverbed guitars. The bass playing is, I think, a little bit unusual. It's not like a line. It's a little bit more musical. The drum pattern is not really typical. So I think if it could stand alone on its own, it could stand on its own as an instrumental track. And this is one of the older ones. This is something that I had written and recorded at least 5 years ago. And I had kind of just shelved it, put it to the side and said, well, that was cool. I'd probably never release anything, whatever, just keep it in the vault. And then when
you had the full instrumental or just like a riff? Or
I had the instrumental. I ended up re-recording most of it, but I had the session that I went back in, and I was able to make it sound a lot better just by re-recording some things. But the music of that was inspired. I was visiting some family on Long Island in New York, out on the North Fork in the Greenport area. Not that not that I expect you to be familiar with the North Fork of Long Island, but beautiful place.
Probably I saw in movies, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like the North Fork of Long Island is, like on the South Shore, you got like a lot of white sand beaches, and
mm,
the North Shore is a little quieter, a little, there's like some farmland, and it's just a little bit more laid back. I think it's not as intense of
mm,
beach, beach community. In any case, I was out there spending some quiet time, and a lot of the inspiration for that song and a couple of the other instrumentals on the record came to me when I was just kind of like, I think it was at night. It was just a super quiet night. The moon was really bright in the sky. The moonlight was kind of shimmering along this calm water. And I was kind of just sitting out there by myself, just like soaking it all in. And I don't know, like I can't really articulate how or why I felt inspired or motivated to write music about that, but I did. I went home and I wrote like a few pieces of instrumental music from that experience. So that's where it stems from.
mm.
And then the lyrical content I wrote in this past year. Originally the song title was Glass Waves, because I thought that was like, a glass wave is like a really clean, clear, it's just like a beautiful natural image of like a nice, clean, clear wave. And then I'm like, well, I have a song on the album called Impossible Waves. And like, this isn't a record about waves.
Too much weight.
So while it was an instrumental, I thought, oh, glass waves. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then I got into that lyric about a heroic dose. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term heroic dose, but it's kind of stems from psychedelic drugs.
Oh, okay.
The song doesn't really have to do with psychedelic drugs, but it's a metaphor, because a heroic dose is when you just take like an epic amount of a hallucinogen, and you become close with God, I think, in that trip. But what I'm talking about is a heroic dose of humility. And that's just a lot of, I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but it's a lot about personal experience in learning about, my own personal character and things to like accept about myself and the world around me, and just things, let's put it this way, things in recent years that have been humbling to me, right? As I've settled into life as, an older adult who's now a father and has a professional life in a world outside of music, and has family responsibilities, and just a need to kind of grow up and look at life through a different lens that includes a lot more gratitude and things like that. So that's where this lyric came from, a heroic dose of my own humility. And then I think later on the lyrics, can you just slow down and wait for it? This too shall pass on its own if you wait for it. Can you just slow down and wait for it? And that's just like a little reminder to myself that, like, even in difficult moments in life, when life gets kind of tough, there's more good times to be had. You just kind of like can't get yourself spun out and crazy in those difficult times. You got to just kind of remind yourself, like, all right, here's another challenge. What am I going to learn from it? How am I going to grow from it? How am I going to get past it to better times? And that's where the lyric is just like, can I just slow down and just wait for that? So yeah, I'm giving away more than I probably should, but that's where it comes from.
No, that's a great concept. So those ideas, so I imagine that it's something that you are thinking about, and then you connected with the idea that the inspiration that you had during that night that you're describing with that instrumental.
Yeah,
That's how it worked. Like, you are thinking about those things, and then it made sense with the instrumental that you already had.
it worked. Yeah, I can't say that I had the foresight 5 years ago, or whenever I wrote that music, that I would eventually come around to singing on it, and that would be the theme of the vocal. It just ended up working. Like the mood, like yes, the vibe, the musical vibe of that song seemed fitting to me, and I didn't really think too much about it, to be honest. Sometimes I jot things down in a notebook, thoughts that I have. I tend to journal on a daily basis anyway, even if it's just about like intentions or things that I'm grateful for. That's just kind of like a daily practice of mine. Sometimes things will jump off that page onto more of a lyric sheet, but yeah, it just kind of worked. Yeah, I was like, this is the right vibe. I thought the music itself was mellow enough to convey that message through.
You're going to ask?
I think it's a big mystery for me, but I guess that's because I'm a visual artist and not a musician. Because you were saying that you were on a specific moment, on a specific place, and you had an idea for a music, a melody, and for me, it's kind of a mystery, like how you are on a place and you can
think of sounds.
think of sounds and make something abstract, because I understand the thing of making something visual because you are on a place and you see things, and with the things you remember another things, and then you can make an illustration, a poem, a painting. But for me, music is so abstract that I don't know, it's a mystery.
But I guess it's more about the feeling, right? It's more like capturing that feeling, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's more about being energized. So it's like, think about it like a fuel tank, right? It's like if my tank is empty, I've got nothing to say. I've got nothing to. I very much feel like I can create music that I would myself enjoy when I'm able to like take myself, my person, my ego, like remove myself and try to be like a filter that is just kind of taking energy from the universe that surrounds me and trying to translate that or transmit that into some kind of sounds. And so that's what I'd say about that experience when I was at night and I was kind of sitting out there and it was beautiful. Like I didn't have an instrument in my hand and I honestly didn't have a melody in my head. It was more so like, this is a cool experience. I'm feeling really energized. As soon as I do get back, to have to a place of creative output, this is the well I'm going to pull
like,
from.
Do you think about like the instrument, like, oh, I'm gonna get the guitar or I'm gonna get the piano, which instrument is going to be the perfect one to recreate that feeling?
Sometimes I do. Like this morning I was walking my dogs and a bass line came into my head and I was like, oh, I forgot it already. I couldn't even tell you what it is. I forgot it. Just like sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and for one reason or another, I have an idea. I used to like write those down. I don't anymore because it's not, these things are kind of fleeting, and my philosophy is like, if they're important enough, they'll come back to you in some way, shape or form. I'm not that desperate to like write every little down, but yeah, sometimes. But to be honest,
that's because I play with Logic Pro for a while, so I kind of like play around doing sounds and stuff like that. But one of the things that I think I got frustrated with like two things. One is like if I have a melody in my head, I was not able to recreate that, and I got frustrated because it was not the same. And also the amount of options of things that you can do, it was a bit overwhelming for me to like, there's so much digital instruments and stuff that I think I got a little bit lost.
It's a double-edged sword, all that digital. I know, I've got some friends who like really use that stuff well to their advantage. And for me, it's a little bit, the paradox of choice and having too many things. I like to take things off the wall. But like, let me ask you this: like, if you have that melody, were you able to hum it? Like, could you sing it or voice it? Like, based on what I'm thinking, it's like, what if you just recorded yourself humming the melody, and then tried to like reproduce, like, you know, copy right over it? You know, so if you recorded the melody, da 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 da, and then you took whatever piano, keyboard, whatever you got, and just tried to, you know,
Yeah, but then it's the problem. It's larger than that. Then it's just the fact that I don't know how to play anything. I need to maybe reach out to a musician, and then I hum to him, and then he plays, and then that's the one.
Oh, that's why we're working together, because I couldn't create any visual arts to save my life. So
yeah, no, but I understand like the question that Chris said, because yeah, I guess for us it's more like we are in a beautiful day at the beach, and then you see a bird, and then I'm gonna draw that bird. It's more like kind of like
It can be about a feeling, but
yeah.
for me it's always something visual, or even something to write. So I think melody and music, it's much more abstract for me, maybe because I'm not an expert into that.
No, but I guess even musicians, like you are saying that you have a different approach to your friend on the other band, that he was more like a lyricist, or somebody who is more into the poetry. So even inside the specific, like I would say, like professions, there's different like ways to approach. So, and that's great, I guess.
Yeah, there's no, like, again, for me it's just more like filling up the tank of energy, like the creative energy tank, and then like letting it spill out sometimes. Like, but to be honest with you, like the way that I create, like the way that I actually will write or record is not, I'm not doing this full time. So, this is, for me, this is like a fun thing to do in the evenings or on the weekends or when I have some free time. And I can't force it always. It's not like a switch I can turn on like a light and I'm just like, oh yeah, great, good idea. Sometimes they come in spurts, and sometimes I don't have any sort of musical output for weeks or months. And then, a weekend will come by and I've got all kinds of things that are, sometimes it's just a matter of plugging. The hardest part, I've heard a lot of other musicians, recording artists say this, like sometimes the hardest part is just sitting down, plugging in, powering on, and just starting. Like I have a friend who's also, a painter and an illustrator, and sometimes he says the same thing. It's like just putting like the first line on something, or just like taking out the equipment, or just taking out, a pen and pencil, whatever, and just getting started, because it's daunting to think about if you don't have a vision for what the end product is going to be. It can kind of be like staring up at a mountaintop and thinking, well, how do I get there? It's too daunting to even start. But if you just take the first step, and then the second step, and then step, next thing you know, you're cooking with something. And that's kind of how I operate too. And sometimes that's like literally me staring at the pattern in my rug and like tracing it, or like looking outside and just losing myself in the leaves on this tree. Because again, I have to escape all the other bullshit in the world and in my life, like to get to that point of putting ego aside, putting self aside, trying to be a clean kind of filter for these things. It's like I have to kind of space out and lose myself and get into a state of flow. And sometimes, again, that's like, having lighting helps, having a weird rug helps, having all those things kind of helps. But all that to say is, like, yes, it's much more for me about feeling, about energy, about intention. And very rarely, if ever, maybe never, have I had like aha, here's my song, now let me go execute it. I don't really, it's not like plan, execute. It's more like, whatever. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think this sounds a lot like Rick Rubin about what he says on his book.
Oh yeah, have you read or heard
Rick
about his
Rubin?
book? Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
I
Chris
love
is
it. And then when I
really.
read that book, I was like, yes. I
Oh,
was
you
like,
read that one? Yeah, it's
oh,
really
and
good.
I like, he found the words to describe how I feel about, yeah, the creative act you're talking about, the
Creative,
book.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't have thought of a better way to describe some of that stuff. I thought it was great.
Yeah, just want to thank you again for chatting here, and thanks again for reaching out to us to do the animations, and also, yeah, congrats for doing this and for all the effort that you put into taking something from you and putting out to the world. Yeah, we can't wait to hear more songs.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks for the collaboration. I'm so happy and grateful to have the music accompanied by your visuals as well. It's so cool to me, and I'm glad we're new friends.
For sure. Yeah.